I don't even know where to start, but I guess I'll just dive in. My wife, Stephanie, and I have been together for almost 7 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but overall, things have been good, or at least that's what I thought. I mean, we've got a pretty solid life together, or at least I thought we did. A house, decent jobs, a couple of vacations under our belt. Everything seemed fine until it wasn't. I started noticing things shifting a few months ago. Nothing huge at first, just little things. She started coming home later than usual, which I didn't think much of at first. She works at a marketing agency, and I know how demanding that can be. But then the late nights started to feel more frequent, and her phone, well, it was always face down whenever we were together. I'm not someone who snoops, but when she would get a call and immediately step out of the room, I started to get this feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. It wasn't just the late nights and the phone. She was more distant, like not emotionally checked out, but there was this wall between us. We'd go a week without really connecting, without really talking about anything that mattered. At first, I convinced myself I was being paranoid, but then came the moment that flipped everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was running errands and needed to grab some coffees. I decided to swing by this little cafe in the corner of town. It's one of those places that's just cozy enough to be a regular spot for locals, but not too packed. I walk in looking for a familiar face, and I spot her, Stephanie, sitting at a table with another guy. I don't know why, but I froze. I couldn't look away. There she was laughing with him, so comfortable, so at ease. I didn't recognize him, but there was something about the way they were sitting that hit me like a punch to the stomach. They weren't just friends. They weren't just having a casual conversation. There was this undeniable chemistry between them. And then she leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. I felt sick, like truly sick to my stomach. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few seconds. They didn't notice me, thank God. I turned and walked out without her seeing me, but my mind was racing a million miles a minute. I spent the next few hours just pacing around, trying to process what I had seen. Was I overreacting? Maybe I was reading too much into a harmless moment. Maybe it meant nothing. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And then, as if the universe wanted to throw salt in the wound, I remembered something. I had picked up her dry cleaning earlier that day, and she had left an envelope in her purse. A letter, I think. Almost didn't think twice about it, but for some reason in that moment, it clicked. I grabbed it. I'll tell you what happened next, but let me just say this. Finding that letter was one of the hardest moments of my life. I don't know what I expected when I opened the envelope, but it certainly wasn't what I found. The letter inside wasn't addressed to me. It wasn't even signed. It was just a plain sheet of paper, and at the top, there were only 2 words, "Don't come home." I was holding it in my hands, trying to wrap my head around it. It didn't make any sense. I stared at those words for what felt like an eternity, but the more I looked at them, the more my heart sank. It wasn't a note about some temporary thing. It wasn't an innocent misunderstanding. It felt deliberate, cold. I remember my mind racing. Was this some kind of joke? But no, the writing didn't feel playful. It felt too serious, too calculated. And the more I thought about it, the more it connected with what I'd seen at that cafe. It was like the universe was just lining everything up in front of me, piece by piece, showing me the truth whether I was ready for it or not. The worst part was, I didn't even need to read the rest of the letter to know it was about him. The guy I saw her with, that smug, charming stranger who seemed to have taken the place I thought was mine. I felt rage building inside me, but also a horrible kind of emptiness, like my heart was being torn out. How long had this been going on? How long had she been hiding this from me? I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. Of course she didn't. She was probably busy with him. The thought made my skin crawl. I didn't know what to do or how to process this. I could feel the panic rising, but I also knew that confronting her right then, without fully understanding everything, would be a mistake. So, I waited. I didn't go home immediately. I stayed out, wandering aimlessly, as if I could outrun the mess that was happening in my life. But no matter how far I walked or how many thoughts I tried to sort through, it kept coming back to that one moment, her kissing him at the cafe, that feeling of betrayal that stabbed deep into my chest. It was overwhelming. My mind kept replaying it over and over. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see her. I had to hear it from her, even if it shattered me. I needed the truth. I don't even know if I was ready for what happened when I finally saw her. I got home just before she did. I don't know how, but I was shaking. My hands were trembling. My whole body felt like it was on fire. Every muscle in me was tense, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, what to ask. But nothing felt right. How do you even begin to confront someone you thought you knew? How do you even begin to ask the questions when you already know the answers? The door opened, and there she was, just like any other day. She looked at me, her face lighting up in that familiar way, but I could see it, the tension in her eyes, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was like she knew. Or maybe it was the shock in my face that gave it away. "Hey babe, you okay?" she asked, her voice too casual, like she hadn't just kissed another man a few hours earlier. I couldn't answer her right away. I just stood there, holding the envelope, the one with those 2 words written on it, the one I never wanted to hold but was now my lifeline. My evidence. "You left this in your purse," I finally managed to say, holding it out to her, my voice barely a whisper. Her eyes went wide for a second, and then she quickly recovered, like a pro. "What's this? What are you talking about?" she said, her tone all wrong, nervous, defensive, like she was already bracing for what was coming. "I saw you," I blurted out, my voice louder now. "At the cafe. With him. You and that guy laughing, sitting together like nothing was wrong. And then this." I held up the envelope. "Don't come home." "What the hell, Stephanie?" Her face went pale. For a second, I thought she might break down, but instead, she just stood there, completely still, not even trying to explain herself. She just looked at me, and it was like the mask fell away. No excuses, no manipulation, just guilt. "You've been seeing him, haven't you?" I asked, the words burning as they left my mouth. It wasn't a question anymore. I already knew. She didn't answer at first, and I almost thought she was going to lie, but then she nodded, just once, very subtly. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me?" I almost laughed, but it came out bitter like a cough. "How long, Stephanie? How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been with him?" She swallowed hard, her eyes starting to tear up. "It just happened. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you. But I cut her off before she could finish. "Stop. Just stop. It's too late for excuses." The tears in her eyes started to fall, and honestly, I didn't know what to feel. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, but I was just numb. I had the picture now, and no amount of her tears was going to change what I saw. What she did. "I saw how you looked at him," I said more quietly now. "I saw the way you kissed him. And I don't know who you are anymore. You're not the woman I thought I married." She stepped closer to me, reaching for my arm. "Please don't say that. I'm sorry. I never meant for you to find out this way." But I pulled away before she could touch me. The contact felt wrong now, like it was too much, too soon. I needed space to breathe, to think, to figure out what I was supposed to do with all of this. "You're sorry?" I asked, laughing dryly. "What's your apology worth now, Stephanie? After everything?" I could see her breaking down, the weight of it finally hitting her. She looked small in that moment, smaller than I had ever seen her before. But I wasn't sure I cared anymore. She had shattered everything I thought I knew about us, about her. I couldn't even look at her the same way. "So, what happens now?" she asked, voice trembling. I shook my head. I didn't have the answers. I didn't know what came next, but I sure as hell knew I wasn't just going to forgive her. Not yet. Maybe never. I don't think I've ever felt more lost than I did that night. She was still there, standing in front of me, her face a mixture of regret and disbelief, and I just couldn't understand why I couldn't feel anything but numbness. I wanted to be angry, I wanted to scream, but it was like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Everything felt hollow. I went to bed that night, but I didn't sleep. How could I? My mind was spinning with all the what-ifs and whys that were bouncing around like a pinball machine. I kept replaying her kiss with him in my head, the way she smiled at him, the way she seemed so comfortable. Why hadn't I noticed the signs earlier? How could I have been so blind to the fact that she was slipping away from me? I didn't trust myself anymore. I felt stupid, weak even. I kept thinking back to all those little moments. How she'd been so distant. How she'd been spending more time at work or with friends. But I'd brushed it off. I told myself it was just stress, just life. But it wasn't. It was her pulling away. I couldn't stay in that house. Not right then. I needed space. So I grabbed my keys, left without saying anything, and just drove, no destination in mind, just away from that place, away from the memories. The drive felt endless. My hands gripped the wheel so tight that my knuckles turned white, but my mind was somewhere else. I don't think I'd ever felt more betrayed in my life. How do you reconcile the person you thought you knew with the one who could deceive you like this? The person who could lie, who could smile in your face while hiding something so wrong. I ended up at my best friend's place. I didn't even call ahead. I just showed up, my face a mix of anger and pain, barely able to keep myself together. He could see something was wrong as soon as I walked in. No questions. No need for small talk. Sit down, he said quietly, guiding me to the couch. What's going on? I don't even remember how it came out, but I told him everything. Every little detail of what happened. The cafe, the kiss, the letter. I poured it all out. And as I spoke, I could feel this weight lifting off my shoulders. Not because I was getting any answers, but because for the first time in a long time, someone else knew what I was going through. Dude, he said after I finished, his voice filled with disbelief. I don't know what to say. That's messed up. But you need to take some time, man. Figure out what you want. That's what I kept hearing from everyone. Take time. Figure it out. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no figuring this out. I was never going to look at her the same way again. I'd loved her. I'd given her everything. I thought we were building something together. But now it all felt like a lie. Like I'd been playing a part in a story that wasn't even real. I stayed at my friend's for a few more days. I needed the break from my life, from everything that was familiar. I wanted to be somewhere where I didn't have to pretend everything was fine. Eventually, I had to go back. I couldn't keep running forever. But the second I stepped back into that house, the weight of it all hit me again. The emptiness, the silence. And there she was, sitting on the couch, waiting for me. She looked so small, so fragile. And yet I didn't feel anything. Not sympathy, not love, just nothing. Are you okay? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, I said, and it was the truth. I didn't know how I was supposed to feel, or what I was supposed to do next. But one thing was clear, I couldn't stay in this. I couldn't pretend anymore. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to figure out what to do, but nothing felt right. It was like I was walking through a dream, everything around me distant, almost unreal. Every time I saw her, the woman I once knew, all I could feel was betrayal. I could still picture her laughing with that guy in the cafe, still feel that sickening twist in my gut. But what was I supposed to do now? We were married. We had built a life together, and despite everything, I still cared about her. I wanted to believe that things could go back to normal, that maybe this was just a mistake, a huge mistake, but maybe something we could work through. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I didn't know who she was anymore. She kept apologizing, kept saying that it wasn't like what I thought it was, that she never meant for it to happen, that it was just a moment of weakness, a mistake. But every time she said it, it felt more like an excuse than an apology. It didn't sound sincere. It sounded rehearsed, like she was trying to talk her way out of something she had already done. I kept thinking about the letter, "Don't come home." And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I didn't have to stay in this. I didn't have to keep living this lie, hoping things would magically get better. Because they wouldn't. I'd lost the trust, the connection, and I couldn't keep pretending like I hadn't. I sat down with her that night. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands trembling in her lap. "I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say," she whispered. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what I knew had to come next. "I know you're sorry, but sorry doesn't fix this. You've broken something that can't be fixed. And I'm done." Her eyes widened in shock. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean, I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice calm, but I felt every word in my chest. "I can't keep pretending that this is okay. I can't keep living with a person who lied to me, who went behind my back with someone else. I don't know who you are anymore. There was a long silence, and for a second I thought she might try to talk me out of it, try to convince me that everything could go back to how it was. But she didn't. She just sat there, staring at me, tears running down her face, and I realized that maybe, deep down, she knew I was right. I stood up, walking toward the door. She didn't try to stop me, didn't say anything else. I knew the decision had already been made. I couldn't keep living in this. Not anymore. I'm leaving, I said, my voice shaking. I don't know where I'll go yet, but I can't be here. Not with you. She didn't say anything. She didn't try to change my mind. And as I walked out the door, it hit me. I was done. It wasn't the resolution I thought I would have, but it was the only choice left for me. Leaving her that night wasn't easy. In fact, it felt like I was walking into a void, not knowing what to expect next. I had no idea where I would stay, what I would do, but I knew I couldn't go back. There was no coming back to the life I'd known. But there was something else building inside me, something I hadn't let myself feel before. Anger. Real, raw anger. I had spent all these years thinking I could trust her, that we were building something real, and now I felt like I was just a fool. But even worse, there was something about her betrayal that sparked something darker in me. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done to me. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to just sit back and let her walk away with no consequences. I wasn't going to lash out impulsively, though. No, that wouldn't be satisfying. I needed something strategic. I needed something that would make her realize what she had lost, what she had thrown away so carelessly. I thought about it for a few days, letting my anger simmer. Then it hit me. I knew exactly how to make her feel it. Stephanie had always been obsessed with her image. She cared a lot about what people thought of her, about her career and social status. And I had learned over the years just how much her appearance mattered to her. So, I decided to hit her where it would hurt the most, her reputation. I called a private investigator, not to find out more about her affair, but to dig up some dirt on her. I knew that if I played my cards right, I could make this whole situation public in a way that would expose everything. Not just her affair, but all the lies she'd been telling. I wasn't going to be the only one who knew the truth. The investigator got to work quickly, and within a few days, I had the information I needed. Proof that she had been lying to everyone around her about the state of our marriage. People at her work, friends, even family. None of them knew the truth. They all thought we were fine. And here she was, pretending everything was great, while hiding her affair from everyone who trusted her. I didn't want to get revenge in some dramatic, wild way. I didn't need to go off the rails. I just needed to be calm, precise, and let her experience the consequences of her actions. I was going to send those people the proof I had, the emails, the photos, the messages. I wasn't doing it to be cruel. I wasn't doing it to humiliate her. I was doing it because she needed to understand the weight of what she had done. She had broken something inside me, and now I was going to show her that there were real, lasting consequences for that kind of betrayal. So, I sent the proof. I wasn't around to see her reaction, but I knew it would hit her like a ton of bricks. I wasn't going to answer her calls, her messages. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing how much it stung me. I was done, and now so was she. The days that followed were quiet, almost too quiet. I didn't hear from her for a while, and part of me wondered what was going on behind the scenes. Was she trying to salvage her image? Was she falling apart too? I didn't know, and frankly, I didn't care. The satisfaction of knowing she was facing the consequences of her actions was enough to keep me going. But eventually, she reached out. It wasn't a phone call or a text message. No, it was a letter. A damn letter. She sent it to my new apartment, the one I'd found after I left the house, the one I was still trying to turn into a space that felt like mine. She apologized again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just some surface-level apology. It was desperate, almost pleading. She wrote about how she couldn't believe she had thrown away everything we had, how she regretted everything, how she had no idea how to fix things. There were parts of me that almost felt bad for her. I mean, it was clear she was hurting, but I couldn't forget what she'd done. And deep down, I knew that the person I had been, the person I had trusted, wasn't someone I could just accept back into my life. I couldn't let her have that kind of power over me anymore. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't even open it fully. I just set it on my desk and stared at it for days. The whole thing felt so hollow. It was her trying to take control of the situation, trying to manipulate me back into feeling sorry for her, back into forgiving her. But I couldn't. My mind kept going back to the day at the cafe, to the way she had looked at him, the way everything just fell apart in an instant. There was no coming back from that. I knew that now. As time passed, I kept moving forward. I focused on work, on building my life again. I went out with friends more, found new hobbies, and just tried to do the things that made me feel whole again. Slowly, it got easier. Slowly, I stopped thinking about her and her betrayal every second of every day. But there were moments, quiet moments, where I would think about what I had lost. What we had lost. Eventually, I came to terms with the fact that this was who she had chosen to be. It wasn't who I wanted her to be. It wasn't the person I had loved, but it was who she was. And I couldn't keep trying to save her from herself. She had made her choice. And so had I. It's been a few months since everything went down, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. It hasn't been easy, but I've learned some important lessons along the way. The biggest one? Trust is everything. You can't build a relationship on lies. And when that trust is shattered, there's no glue strong enough to put it back together. Maybe some people can forgive, can rebuild after something like this. But for me, I don't think I can. Not with her. Not with the way she betrayed me. But I've also learned that I can move forward. I can rebuild my life, even when it feels like everything has fallen apart. I've started to trust myself again, and that's been the most healing part of all. As for Stephanie, I don't know where she is now. I don't know if she learned anything from all of this. I don't care to know. What I do know is that I'm done being a part of her story. So if you're reading this and you're in a relationship where you feel like something's off, trust yourself. Don't ignore the signs. And if you find out that the person you love isn't who you thought they were, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to take back your peace and your trust. You deserve better.